Call this evening's Plan Commission meeting to order. Everybody have a chance to take a look at the minutes?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Public hearing on an application for a conditional use permit submitted by Mayo Clinic Health System, Northwest Wisconsin Region, Inc., for a medical facility, St. Croix County, tax parcel number 236-2037-04-000. Please keep in mind that this is just strictly on the use of the property. That's it. I know that we have a few items on the agenda here, and I'm not sure who's here for what, but I imagine we've got a probably split crowd for both of the issues, the major issues. So please keep in mind, try to keep your comments as concise as possible, and please also try to refrain from being repetitive. That would be great and help us get through this evening. It's going to be a long night, I think. So, anybody have any comments? Step forward, please, and identify yourself. Come up to the microphone. Identify yourself and tell us where you live, please. Yes, right there. Thank you.
I am Sister Trish Erickson. I live in the Carmelite Monastery on Laurel Avenue and here in Hudson. My big question is, why do they want to come here? I grew up in Albert Lee, and Mayo and the citizens of Albert Lee are having huge fights, and I just don't want to see that happen here. And why do they need to expand? That's all.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
Good evening. My name is Jackie Nelson, and I've lived in this region for over 30 years, and I'm here to represent my family, who has accessed the Hudson Physicians, Hudson Hospital, River Falls Hospital, and also have family in Red Wing and have accessed the Mayo system.
Could I just interrupt for a
Sure.
second? Could you give your address, please?
I live at W12557 695th Avenue in Prescott. So I live between here and Prescott. I just want to share some thoughts about Mayo coming to the community. First of all, my concern is the cost of care, and I base this on knowledge from friends and family that have utilized the Mayo system or have been referred. And even in a previous job that I had, I know that patients who are referred into the Mayo system, they don't often accept the tests that other systems do, and they repeat them. And that costs patients money, inconvenience, and even possibly extra radiation exposure if it's imaging that's involved in those additional tests that have already been done. They also push care to Rochester. A personal family member in the last month ended up being shipped to Rochester for a procedure that seems that, I don't know, I can't judge the doctor's decision, but it put him in a situation of being alone because it's too far away. And that's not unusual because that's where they would send their tertiary or more complicated cases. And my biggest concern is what the presence of Mayo will do to the community of Hudson. I won't repeat what the previous speaker talked about, but there's actually a Facebook page that people can go on to, Save My Hospital, Albert Lee, and you'll see some of the comments, and I would encourage people to do that. I will say though that I feel like we've been loyal to the Hudson physicians and Hudson Hospital because we have gotten good care, and I'm concerned that they'll cannibalize some of that care away from the hospital, and it could really have a negative impact on that hospital, River Falls, Western Wisconsin Health. I'm just concerned about some of these local hospitals by having this system come to our region. And finally, I just want to say it always makes sense to bring new business or healthcare in particular to a community that has an unmet need. And I don't see that in our community. I see that we already have competition, whether it's here or the other facilities I mentioned, or within a few minutes to Healthies, Fairview, Alina. There's just so many options for our patients, And I just feel like bringing Mayo to the Hudson community is only gonna increase the cost of care. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Step forward, please.
Hello, Diana Vance Bryan. I live at 279 St. Andrews Drive in Hudson, Wisconsin. And I am a patient of Hudson Physicians and Clinics and also at HCMC. And I'm here just because I have concerns about what the gaps are in care. I don't want to repeat what others have said, but reading what the publicity has been to date, it's about filling in gaps and what has Mayo done to identify those gaps, also cost. But then finally, what hasn't been mentioned so far is equitable access to care. So if Mayo comes in and is filling gaps in the services needs of this community, which I don't know what they are, but open to hearing that, my next would be, what are they doing to ensure equitable access for those who are not on commercial plans, but the Medicaid covered lives in our community? Knowing that in the past, Mayo has made public comments about serving the Medicaid population. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Anyone else? Seeing no other people that would like to make a comment, we will close the public hearing.
So moved.
And I'll second.
Motion is second to close. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion's approved. Discussion of possible action on an application for a conditional use permit submitted by Mayo Clinic Health System Northwest Wisconsin Region, Inc. for a medical facility, St. Croix County tax parcel number 236-2037-04-000. Before we get started on this, I just would once again like to remind everybody here that the items within the purview of the Plan Commission is just has to do with nothing more than the use of the property, whether it is an appropriate use, whether we should grant a conditional use, and it really has nothing to do with the quality of care, the reasoning why they are coming. That's something that if this body sends this forward with a recommendation to approve, would be taken up by the City Council. At that point, we would be having those discussions at the City Council meeting. Okay? Any discussion?
Everything I've read, they conform and meet the criteria that's already, the land that's up there and their potential use for it seems totally appropriate. The location, I feel, is actually very good because it is not centralized, causing any traffic issues. Maybe we don't know all the answers to that yet, but it just seems like a very good spot for, you know, with adequate parking and access to a couple ramps to get there, exit 2 and exit 4, and from the city, that would be a good use for that parcel of land.
Okay. Anybody else? Sorry, the public hearing portion is closed. Any other comments? Entertain a motion?
I will move to approve
With conditions?
with the conditions set forth by Mr. Johnson, yes.
Okay. Is there a second? Motion is second to approve. Any discussion? Mike, anything you want to add?
No, very straightforward. Obviously, there's a number of things that would have to happen if this moved forward, right? One of those conditions that placed or in the recommendation is that upon concept development plan submittal, that we would revisit the conditional use application for consistency and compliance with what was approved tonight.
So just to clarify, you're adding all the staff recommendations, those 5
I'm
points.
not adding, I'm including, I just
Very good.
neglected to include, but yes.
Okay, everybody clear? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. Discussion of possible action on comprehensive plan amendment, 721 First Street and 811 First Street, Monarch Ventures LLC. Mike?
Dave Schofield, our contract engineer, working on the city's behalf, is here to help us work through this. This is a complicated project. It's very involved. Should we wait a second?
Yeah.
We'll wait a minute.
Pitchforks and torches.
Hell, we even got security. We even got security tonight, you see?
Oh, could be. Could be. No applause. All right, let's continue.
Very involved. Obviously, the Plan Commission's seen the concept development plans. Tonight, we're going to be looking at the zoning piece, which would include an amendment to the existing future land use map, which is contained in the comprehensive plan. You'd be looking at then an action to rezone 721 First Street and 811 First Street to B4, which is that transitional business district that the Plan Commission enacted right about the time I got here, about 10 months ago. I think the staff report's pretty clear that Andrew Bramer, who is a colleague of Mr. Schofield's, put together. I think obviously the intent of the B4 district and the intent of that is to create that transitional zone. Now, obviously, this commission and the council is going to have to wrestle with intensity of use. We're talking conditional use permit approval as part of, if that were to be approved, the rezoning. But I think that initially, the conversation has to, revolve around, is the amendment to the comprehensive land use plan, future land use plan, amending from office and R2 to family residential, is that appropriate in this application to go to B4? So the applicant's here, Mr. Schofield's here. I think it's also important to note that the Board of Appeals approved a variance application for disturbance in the slope preservation zone prior to this meeting. So any slope greater than 12%. The findings of fact associated with that are that really the main gist is that the site is pretty much undevelopable because the entire site's in that 12% slope area or within that 40-foot buffer from
Mike,
it.
has it passed 3 other times? Is that the same? Is there?
It's passed a few, at least once. The latest one was in 2014, was a variance was approved for development in the slope preservation zone, as well as some setback issues that had to be resolved at the existing Norlake, or was the old facility. Sorry.
Could we get somebody to quiet people down out there? Thank you.
Thanks, Buck. So yes, a variance was previously approved, at least one. That site has a long history, right? It was the Norlake facility, and everybody knows what that was for so long. Since that variance, Monarch Ventures did acquire that 721 First Street property. So the house, the vacant house that's there, which was also included in that variance approval earlier. That's where we're at is, okay, you've got a portion of the property considered currently with the future land use designation as office, and then you have the non-conforming lot that one spot that is the R2 two-family residential in the comp plan. So, questions?
I'm sorry, did you talk about the zoning board of appeals?
Yeah, that's the variance piece.
Okay. Jeez. I mean, the outcome, okay.
I just want to comment on the 12% slope part of it. I mean, I've lived here all my life. When I was a kid, that was railroad tracks. I mean, that's been dug up and altered and changed so many times down there and behind North Lake facilities. Do we even know what the normal 12% slope line would be there? Because it doesn't look the same now as when I was a kid, and it's changed a couple times in between. So I guess,
And we've changed it.
and we have changed it, thank you.
Yeah, we put the trail in.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to let that point be known that, you know, what is the real original grade of that? And I don't think, I mean, I'd be hard pressed to find anybody that would know that. Or have any familiarity about that when it was natural, normal grade. I just don't ever recall it ever being that way. Something was always there.
Yeah, and I grew up down there too, same thing.
Yeah.
So did Pat.
So if that issue persists, that's why I'm making the comments
Or
that
the
I
county
am.
side over.
Drag you into it, huh?
You know, I think it's also important to note that public hearings on the rezoning and the comprehensive plan amendment take place at the council level. Public hearings on CUPs happen here. Okay? That's a good, it's an important point for those in the audience that are obviously interested in this project, that, you know, the public hearing component, you know, their voices will be heard at whatever point in the process, if it moves to that point.
Mr. Mayor, I'd
Yeah.
like to,
Step up, please. Thanks, Bob.
Clarence Malik, 413 Brookwood Drive, I'd like to put it on the record that for anybody to make a decision before they've held the public hearing seems to me to be procedurally defective, and I suggest you refer that to the city's council. On the record, do what you think is right. If that's the way you always do it, I'm not sure you're doing it right. It doesn't seem right.
I'd suggest that this group isn't to make a final decision, they make a recommendation to the group that makes a final decision.
Anybody else? Any other comment? Your motion?
So can you clarify what the, I apologize, it was very loud in the beginning, and so I wasn't able to hear some of the pieces. So, what's the actual motion that you're looking for to change the comprehensive plan to?
They're requesting,
Yes. Correct.
they're looking at changing the comprehensive plan land use designation, future land use designation from office and R2 single family or two family residential to the B3 or the B4 central business
Okay.
district.
That's the zoning.
That's the zoning.
Yeah, here, I can jump in here. I'm Dave Schofield with MSA.
All right, just one quick question before that. This is the change from the plan that they've been bringing, that we've been working on, that they've been bringing forward since 2015? Is it?
No, this is a different plan.
It's the same one from a few, well,
Yeah.
the concept plans a few months
Concept
ago.
plan from
Yes.
before.
Yes. So they're looking from office and R2 to downtown commercial for both 811 and 721 First Street.
Just point of clarification, though, but it has housing involved in it.
Yes, and that's the second. There's three parts to the discussion today. The first part is that they're requesting a change to the comprehensive plan. Right now, 721 First Street, which is the house,
Yes.
is in your comprehensive plan as single and two-family residential. And they're requesting that be changed to downtown commercial. The 811 First Street, which is the existing First Street station property, is currently in the comprehensive plan as neighborhood commercial, and they're requesting it be changed to downtown commercial. So they would both be downtown commercial in the comprehensive plan. The second part of it is the actual zoning. They're requesting it be changed from,
Office.
on 721, which is again the house, would be changed from R2, two-family residential, to a B4 central business district. The 811 First Street would be changed from office to B4 central business district. So at the end of the day, if the comprehensive plan and the rezoning are approved by the city council, both properties would be zoned, would be in the comprehensive plan as downtown commercial and would be zoned as B4 central business district. The next item, which will be after the public hearing, is the actual conditional use permit required for under the B4 zoning.
So this requires two motions then, one to bring both properties, you know, from residential to commercial and neighborhood to downtown commercial. Does it require a motion for that? And then a second motion to change the zoning?
Correct.
Okay. I'll make the motion on the first part of it is, you know, to change the residential to commercial and the neighborhood to downtown, or to be, both of them to B4 from their existing status.
Just to clarify, it should be to downtown commercial, which is the classification in the
B4 is the
comprehensive plan.
second one.
Yes, sir, then.
Yes.
I stand corrected, and that is what I meant.
Second.
Got a motion, a second? Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Public hearing on, discussion and possible action on application to rezone 721 First Street and 811 First Street Monarch Ventures LLC.
And again, this is to the B4 zoning. The B4 zoning doesn't have on its own a permitted use. It has to have a conditional use. So if you go to B4, just know that you have to then follow up with a conditional use permit.
Sorry, if you go to B4, you do or don't have to follow up with a conditional
You
use?
do have to have a conditional use permit.
I'll move to approve that from, is it 721? Is it D we're on? Yep, 720 first, or what is it? Both? I'll move to what he said.
Okay,
Yeah, both 721 First and 811 First would be zoned B4.
And I'll second that. That only makes sense for those parcels to be connected, so.
okay. Got a motion, a second? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Public hearing on an application for a conditional use permit for a mixed-use building submitted by Monarch Ventures LLC, 721 First Street. Is there anyone here who would like to make a comment? Step forward, please. Your name and address. Yep.
So Matt Frisbee with Harris Associates. I'd like to walk through the project if this is a good time. Or would you like to, I just don't want to be out of process here. I'd like to walk through some of the things we had and kind of update you on the design. Andy Crone's here from the ownership. Dan Burnham here, one of the architects too. Anyone introduce yourself?
Yeah, Andy Crone with Monarch Ventures. I'm the partner on the project that we're looking at here tonight.
So just, we'll keep it brief because I know that you have this in your packet also, and we can leave it more for question and answer time too. But as Andy has acquired the house here in November of 16, so it's been a little over a year now, we've been working on master planning this and gone through a lot of the different steps and the approvals already over the last year and a half. As we've expanded this building, it's 7,300 square foot footprint. It is a 3-story building from the First Street side. And then if you're familiar with the site, the boulevard drops down as a shared drive between the two buildings and comes in at a lower level for underground parking for the building. 2 levels from the First Street up will be a corporate office tenant. And then the top level will be a rental or condo at the third level of the building. There'll be 4 units up at the residential piece.
Matt, just for clarification and for the
Sorry.
TV audience, it's a 3-story building,
It's a
not a
3-story
4-story.
Correct, it's a 3-story building from the First Street side. As you come around to the parking side to tuck under to the underground parking, it has a 4-story appearance from that side, just for clarification. We do meet the requirements.
Appearance on the
Sorry.
First Street side or the River side?
The First Street side is a 3-story.
I thought you just said it appears like a 4-story.
As you come around to the back side of the building, which would be the parking lot of the riverside, as a 4-story building. And that is the underground parking, the tuck under. So, to put into context, the building next door is a kind of a story and a half from First Street, 2-story from the riverside. Footprint a little bit larger than that. Across the way, we have the condo building is a 4-story building. The library building, just adjacent to that, is a 3-story building. Phipps, just a little bit further down, is about a 2.5 to 3-story presence. It's actually 2-story. And then just to talk about setbacks, we're meeting the setbacks of the zone. We're meeting the height requirements of the zone. We're not asking for anything outside of that. We have been back and forth on the land swap on the different parcels, from adding the 7 additional stalls out on First Street as part of the development of this project. That'll be under the cost of the development. And then as you come down, I cut it off on the site plan, but down on Orange Street, there's space there for parking and access for canoes, kayaks, and parking down on that end. And then the trail down below here stays the same. We're not going to reroute the trail. That's been improved over the last couple of years, or a couple of years ago, I should say. And that's in a good position there. There's a little bit of a misconception of where the building is situated. It is not in front of the library. It's actually to the north of the library site. So there was a comment that someone made about it's blocking the library's view. It's actually north of the library. But again, that's what I have here. And I just wanted to show you too, because there was a comment on the riverside. You have some pictures in your packet, but we did superimpose and make on the riverside. We had some pictures on that side. The existing 2-story building is here. The proposed building is here. So we actually superimposed on there with the trees and what that would look like if you were out. This is actually a little bit higher than a boat. We're about 15 feet to 20 feet off. And then we just have some aerial views for context of the new building, what we're proposing there. Let's see, what else did I have on my notes here real quick? Oh, and then, yeah, so we were just talking about the rezoning and bringing these together. That's kind of an island of that house that sits there as an old R2. And as Andy acquired that house, the idea was to combine that into this particular lot. And then there was a comment about the massing of this building over the design process. We are coming up against the sidewalks, so pretty similar to what happened here at First and other buildings within the downtown zone. But it's a 7,300 square foot footprint. If you think about the library is about a 15,000 square foot footprint, 3 stories. So that's twice the size. Phipps is about 25 to 30,000 as a footprint. So as you come down First Street to the north, if you think about the massing of those, this actually is less of a mass than that. We have materials, and I can go through some of those real quickly because that might be a question that comes up. We are looking at, from the First Street side, we'll have stone, brick, and other masonry, and actually natural stone, not synthetic stone. We will have, as part of the entry to this corporate office facility here, we will have some glass for the offices here. It will not be mirror glass. I know there's a question about birds and other things there, and reflective glass being on the riverway. We're very cognizant of that. We will be working with Anderson Windows for all of this, and they want to use this as a showpiece for themselves too. And then as you come around, this would be a view similar from First Street Station looking south. So what we did is we took the materials and proportions to complement what was happening with that one as kind of a nod to what was there with the First Street Station. Then as you come around to the parking level side, and then the city path, the park path is down below us here. And again, we still have masonry material, stone, and then we do have a panel called nichiha. It's a cementitious panel. It's not siding. It's actually a panel that has a wood look to it, and then also like a stucco panel look. So it's not a metal panel on the riverside. We do have some decks on the 4 units up above, looking out towards the river, and then the corporate office again in the first and second level of the building. So you can see where the tuck under is here for the lower level garage. It's fairly quiet on this side of the building. Did I miss anything, Andy?
I don't think so.
Okay. Again, I can come back. I got other notes, but it is more of some questions and answers once we get a little bit further into it.
Now, do you have a distance between the southwest corner of the building to the edge of the path?
Ooh, down that far?
I'm just wondering what the distance is from the actual structure to the bike path. I don't know if I see it on
Oh, you mean, I'm sorry, are you going to the north to Orange Street or to the south to the band shell?
25 feet.
To the band shell.
25 feet?
To the path is 25 feet. Oh, I'm sorry, down below, sorry, yeah. I thought you were trying to get to the back.
So what's the green space? Where is so are you going right up to the edge? I mean, I think I'm missing green space in that transition
Sure.
piece from a beautiful park area to a building.
So right now, that house sits right here, and again, there's, sidewalks and things attached to that. The parking lot is underneath the building right now, that we're actually gonna take that piece of the parking lot back and put the parking under the building. So the green space that's left is on this side here and on this side here on the river side.
But there's no green space as you make the transition between the park and the building.
Oh, well, this is the picture of the house, so you can see where the path is coming along. It might be a little bit tough to see, but this green space and where the house is now would be similar.
But there's no green space. I mean, because your building is where the house is going, where the house is.
Correct, yeah.
So there's really no green space between the building and the park.
Actually, there is. It's about 25 feet here, and then it widens out before it gets down to
But on your edge of the building though,
this is 5 feet to the property line.
so 5 feet of green space.
On the south side. Right, and that meets our setback requirement.
Right, but I'll save my comments later.
Did you also say there is no green space down further north behind the building?
There is a green space between the building and the drive, the boulevard drive that comes down.
Okay, go south.
But that's just.
Very bottom of the building. Right. There's nothing planned for there.
This is existing parking right now, so that's staying as is. The city property line comes up like this, and so we would then use that to tuck under to the parking. So the existing dash footprint that was here from 2014 and 15 was right here. And then since for the last 18 months, 16 to 18 months, we've been showing this as an extended footprint.
This is the first I've seen this. So I don't know where you've been showing.
Well, a lot of park board meetings and other things.
In here.
And here, yeah.
We showed the concept a couple of weeks ago.
Mhm. You want to talk about the use?
Yeah, I can speak to the use if you want to hear about that. So the use, it's a mixed-use building. There's going to be 2 levels of corporate office user that's looking at relocating from Woodbury, Minnesota. And then on top of those 2 levels of corporate office, there will be 4 residential condo units. The corporate office user is wanting to be anonymous at this point out of respect for, he had announced to his employees that he's making the relocation at this point. It's a business that will fit well into downtown and give us some of that much needed office use downtown Hudson. The size of it, he's currently in a building that's around a 6,800 square foot footprint, and he's at a total of about 11,000 square feet. So the proposed square footage that he's taking is similar to what he has now, with a little bit of growth factored in for the next couple of years that he anticipates. The condo units, there's 4 those up on the top floor, and that's gonna be the use for the building. The other objective was to take a couple of the parcels of land that were different uses, try to clean up what it is in that area, combine the two, and at the same time developing 7 new parking stalls that we'll be paying for, and then also doing and helping out with the encroachments at the end of the property as well that we'll be giving back to the city, and then helping develop additional parking and cleaning up the area down at the north end of the site as well.
Just a quick question. I noticed that you still have space in your first building, so how much of that do you have yet to lease out?
We have about 2,200 square feet. We have a signed LOI right now, and we anticipate that getting the build out starting in early June. So it'll be 100% occupied hopefully in mid-July.
Great.
Yeah.
How many employees are any?
Employees will be coming, between 35 and 50 is what we're hearing at this point. And it's an office use, so the great thing about office use, it's daytime traffic. We have the adequate parking to take all of those employees, making sure that they're not straining the public parking areas. We're gonna have them park here, daytime traffic, and then obviously nights and weekends, they will not be using the space. So again, that'll leave the parking lot available for public like we've had in the past is the intent. The residential units, we're getting some interest from people that have other homes in other areas, so we're anticipating part-time users in those units. So there'll be a very light, minimal impact on the downtown area as well.
I've got a question, and you maybe gave the number before. Your existing building now, the old warehouse building, the approximate square footage of that footprint is how many square feet?
5950,
And you're proposing your square footage?
73,
Okay.
56.
Yeah. So that's,
Just barely under the height restriction.
that's big.
We're under the height restriction. We didn't need to go for a variance for that. We knew that we wanted to be sensitive to that NR 118 application, and knew that that would be something we wouldn't be able to do. So we were very cautious in the way we designed it, and factored a lot of those decisions in on the design, making sure we met all the setbacks, the code requirements, and height restrictions.
Any comments from the National Scenic Riverway?
No, we've submitted. There was no comment from DNR, which is obviously, we didn't have to comment back. There was I think it was a 72-page document that we submitted, and there was one comment that came back, so.
Is that been approved, or is that something through the?
The DNR has 30 days to review it, and in those 30 days, they had no comment. So when the review process goes through, and after 30 days, then they're not approving it, but they're not denying it.
Okay.
So I'm a little naive to that process, but if you don't get comment back, that's obviously a good thing.
And those 30 days have passed?
Yes. Yeah.
Does the city need proof of something like that to proceed, just to make sure it's cleared that type of hurdle?
They make the application, we send it to DNR. DNR responded to me,
Okay.
and said that they would not be commenting on the variance application.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. Any other questions?
maybe in a little bit.
Okay, I'll stay here then. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments? Yes.
Marion Weber, 604 Grandview Drive, Hudson. And I've been knowledgeable about this project kind of from the beginning, and have some strong thoughts about what I would like to see happen to it, but obviously that's not going to happen. But there is a path that goes behind that site. It's a path that is intended to be improved to be a useful bicycle pedestrian pathway through the park. Right now, that path isn't wide enough to serve that purpose, so it had to be made bigger. I think as a good neighbor, there might be some possibility of the organization putting the cost of improving that path, since it's going to be a little bit more expensive to do now than it would have been. And I'd like to see that respected. So, that's what I have to say.
Okay, thanks, Marion. Any other comments? Jim?
Jim Weber, 604 Grandview. The width of the sidewalk in front of both buildings, at what point does it drop back down to the narrow 3-foot sidewalk that they have?
I
Is it wider in front of the buildings?
At the east, or at the southernmost point, isn't it 6.95 feet from wall to curb?
Correct, yeah, this is the narrow spot, it's almost 7 feet, and then it widens out through here, and then ties into the boulevard and the 6-foot sidewalk from the sidewalk across to the First Street. So it doesn't, there's no 3-foot sidewalk.
Further up there is, it's narrow.
Oh, like way north?
Not very far north.
Okay,
It's
well,
pretty narrow.
it'd be north of the First Street Station
Yeah,
building.
great.
then. Okay.
Open residential.
Any other comments? Yes.
Hi, I'm Ginger Alden. My husband Charlie Alden and I are one of those people that bought one of the units across the street, 720 First Street, because we want to spend some time on the river, and we have family in the cities, and we're migrating from Wausau on a river to Hudson on a river, and we're so delighted to be here. My husband's family owned a home on the St. Croix down in the town of Troy, in the cove down there for 30, 20 years. I thought I was coming here to comment on the zone change, and I thought that was what was going on here tonight, a hearing for a zone change. When did that happen?
The hearing happens at the council, the public hearing on the zone change.
So isn't a zone change that's considered by the planning commission also a public hearing?
They're making a recommendation to the council will.
Okay. Well, I don't want to go into too much on that because you've already made you've taken your motions and approved the zone changes. I would then only say as we go forward to the plan, the conditional use and the ultimate plan that occurs on that site, that something like a 5-foot setback here, someone referred to that as code, but you've just adopted a B4, so you can do anything you want on those setbacks, am I wrong?
0 side yard, front yard, they have to have at least 25, for any project, any property in the B4 has to have at least a 25-foot rear yard.
Side yard?
0.
But you have the opportunity through the CUP to adjust those property uses? Isn't it like,
You can, the CUP, yeah, there's a lot of flexibility in the B4, and that's why it was designed as such. If the plan commission or council thought, the intensity of the use was too much, the scale, whatever it might be, that you thought that wasn't appropriate in a B4 district, that you would have the ability through that conditional use permit process to, either restrict or place, special conditions on a project.
since this project is unique because it comes up against conservation recreation land, the park, I would hope that this impact here would be minimized so that the public using these public areas are not going to be shocked by, this large structure boom at the end of the parkway. I think the scale is a little bit out of whack. This originally was proposed by the Caruso family to be a couple of office buildings of a lower scale. I think there were two stories as recently as 2 or 3 years ago, and I thought that scale looked great. So I hope that as this process goes through, that some of these considerations can be taken into account and maybe reduce the impact of a very large monolithic structure that is the only one that will appear on that side of the river in Hudson. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comment?
Hi, Steve Metcalf, my wife Kathy and I have been residents in the area for a long time now.
Address, please.
I'm sorry, 331 Sioux Line Road is our official residence. We also recently purchased a condo across the street, 720 First Street. And what kind of struck us about the area, we love the downtown riverfront area. We've been hanging out there for years, love the way the city's developed it. I mean, it's really transformed over the last 15 years, and as everybody here knows, would probably agree, a really pleasant place to be. The nice thing about the transition to the parkland and the walkways in the riverfront area is that there really is sort of an expansive view. If you're on the other side of First Street, you're in the library or in the Phipps, you know, our daughter takes dance there. You get some incredible sweeping views of this area, kind of both to the north and south. Whether it's trees, whether it's water, whether it's sky, it's all there. So my comment, and I wrote a letter to really the city, the planning commission, to just to kind of address the concern, is really more about size and scale. Okay, if we think about, you know, we're about to make a decision that will affect the human scale of this area for years to come. And it will probably set a precedent for other types of development in the area. And really the part that I struggle with is that no matter how you look at this, this is the biggest structure you could possibly put in that space. If you do the math, it's about the length of half a football field. And it's at the maximum height level, 3 stories. It's the only thing in that area that would actually be on that side of First Street, anything close to that height and that expanse. If you think about going up and down First Street, it's really clear, other than residential. And then the existing office building that's there that would be merged together is of a nice scale. It actually looks like a nice, it's a very attractive scale and size, and be fantastic if it is full. But we really need to be thinking about the impact of bringing a development like this in at that scale, at that size, you know, and also bringing in additional 50, 60 people parking in and out every day. There's a con to that too. And so the concern again is what we're about to do, what we're about to allow to happen, and the appropriateness of it. And I talk to my kids a lot about kind of appropriateness, and this is an example of where possibly a smarter design, a design that doesn't absolutely max out that footprint, that would be just a better flow with the area, a better flow, wouldn't block views from the library, wouldn't block views from other areas, would certainly be kind of a welcome thing, and would probably be a lot more consistent with the comprehensive plan for the city. So that's what I wanted to say. There's quite a few letters from residents, you know, really in opposition to the scale. Not so much the concept of redeveloping it. You know, the small house there isn't really worth anything to anybody. But just putting something in context of what we're doing and the precedent that we're setting for years to come. So my recommendation would be to consider the development, but consider some kind of a different design, an alternative design concept than what's being presented right now. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any other comments?
Hi, I'm Landberg. I'm at 720 Loss, also across the street from this. And I just wanted to clarify or ask a question about the DNR. They mentioned that they received no comment back, but I heard earlier that the DNR does not usually comment on this, that it's more of a city thing. It's not like the St. Croix River Crossing Bridge where the DNR was quite involved. So I guess I don't want to say that the DNR has approved the project, that it's the city. So I don't want that other people to think that the DNR doesn't have any concerns about it.
Yeah, I can certainly address that. So the DNR was given an opportunity to comment on the issues surrounding NR 118. The developer will be responsible for obtaining a DNR permit, a Chapter 30 permit, notice of intent permit. Those are conditions, at least in my recommendation letter. Those are conditions of the approval here. The DNR doesn't approve or deny riverway issues. They have ceded that to the city in this case. But they do provide guidance when they feel as if the city is going to make a poor choice, and they did not provide guidance in this case.
My other comment would be the other buildings, the library, the Phipps. You know, the thing, you know, when you look at the slope of things, I mean, all the buildings behind it, when you're at Mallory's, you can see over those buildings. Those other ones, they're all on a slope. You know, this one's on this side of the river, you know, not up there. And the other comment I just wanted to make was I know when I first moved my business here in 2008, there was a project at Riverfront, and they wanted to redo that and put 3 stories on top, I think, or 4. I mean, it was a large project, and that was not allowed to do there, which isn't right on the river either, so, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I meant to send this letter in earlier.
I have.
You have it. You have one.
Saving a stamp, huh?
You had one. And I'm gonna read it so you don't have to.
Thanks, John.
Go too far with that. My name is Dennis Kroll, and I live at 720 First Street. And we developed that project. And this project, I'm a little bit surprised, and I didn't see the plans until a couple of weeks ago, and I was kind of shocked. At the scale, with the scale and the height, the height is actually the same as the height of the pergolas on the 720 project. It's that high. And the length, being 140 some feet long, is pretty massive. It becomes a wall. and I knew that Andy was going to develop this all the time, all along. And I just didn't realize that so much of it, that they were gonna use B4. And B4 has no, has 0 front and side setback lines. And it's meant to be, meant to take place of downtown commercial, or meant to be downtown commercial in the residential area. And my point is that, just going back to the comprehensive plan and what I was expecting, I would expect from that comprehensive plan, they don't match up. I would have expected that comprehensive plan, from the comprehensive plan that's there from 2013, and that I accepted at that time. I did not oppose it. I would expect that this would have some setbacks. Office has 20-foot setbacks on the sides, and it has 40-foot in the front and the back. And that's something I would have expected to be put in there, something that was consistent with the comprehensive plan and the zoning. I mistakenly thought that the office zoning was 35 foot high, and I think that is 45 foot high. They have maxed that out. And that's the height of the BR4 that they're requesting. I'm a little bit surprised that this CUP hearing is actually after you guys have made a recommendation for the comprehensive plan change, the amendment to that. There's a law in Wisconsin there's a law that, the SMART law requires that that you actually conform to the comprehensive plan. There's a chapter in that actually requires conforming to the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is in place with the intent of giving property owners some stability, some as far as expectations go, some way of planning for the future. And if I were to plan for the future based on what's there, I would not expect this massive building. I mean, it becomes a wall from either side. It's almost 50 feet high on the riverside, and that's once you get up to it. And it's as high as the 4 stories across the street. Anyhow, I moved here because of the St. Croix, and because the St. Croix is not like Lake Minnetonka. The St. Croix is different because of the protections of the Lower St. Croix River Act. And I was aware, like I said, that Mr. Crone was going to develop this property, but when I first saw the plans, I really was shocked. And that was just recently.
the scale and having no setbacks, or 5-foot setback. So, I'm in favor of improvement and development. Having seen the Caruso development plans for 2013, I always assumed that something would be built there. I didn't oppose the zoning and comprehensive plan at the time because of the scale of proposed development. It seemed to fit with the neighborhood. It seemed to be somewhat appropriate. The history of that area was that, I mean, you guys know this better than I. Back in 2004, the zoning was changed to R2 because the residents all along that area wanted it to be residential or to stay residential. And then when Caruso's bought it, they couldn't, the only way they could really develop it and sell it was, and to get the money they wanted out of it, was to get it changed over to this office park kind of concept. And so the comprehensive plan was changed in 2013, and the zoning was changed.
There was a correction on that. That was an old North Lake warehouse, and so
Right.
back in those days, that land was never residential. It was
Right.
always tied to North Lake to some degree, you know, in the function that it served, so.
Right, light
To point
industrial.
that out,
actually,
just
yeah.
to point it out.
Yeah, light industrial, but somehow or other, and this is something that I missed about the time I was moving here, somehow or other that was changed to R2. And they were having trouble developing that as R2. Anyhow, that's just history.
Well, they tried to sell the land for residential, and nobody wanted to assume the tear down cost of that solid cement warehouse that was built like a bunker. And so the reason it was never sold was for those reasons. It was too expensive to redevelop in that form for
Right.
residential.
We had some ideas about how to do that with, by keeping the structure, but that's beside the point. I believe anyhow, this will negatively impact our property values. At the scale that was proposed, okay? I invested in it and developed property at 720 with the expectation the comprehensive plan was something I could rely on, and that development would conform to it. Many of the owners have chosen to move here and invested because of these expectations. Our project across the street is a mixture of office and residential uses and in six condominiums with some common space. We did not require variances or changes in zoning. We conformed to the comprehensive plan all the way, the downtown overlay. If that downtown district went up to that corner at the time, that was the northwest corner of downtown business, where North Lake is right now. Okay, we conform to that. If the proposal is approved, I intend to ask for reduction in property tax assessment. And anyhow, 721 was purchased by Mrs. Erickson about 2.5 years ago. That's the little house. And in my discussions with Danny Darnold, the Community Development Director, I came to believe that she, and from what she said, she intended to develop it as a memorial garden to her late husband, or as an ice cream shop. Either one would have been a delight, in my mind, anyhow, and would have been. I thought that when Andy bought this or acquired it from his aunt, that possibly he was going to use this to satisfy some of the setback requirements. And once you introduce downtown commercial right there, or B4, there are no setback requirements at all. It can go right up to the line, both on the sidewalk and on each end. They held back 5 feet. It has a 25-foot setback in the back, and that's where the parking is, and that's just part of the B4. He has since combined the property, that property with the property to the north. Anyhow, that's pretty much what I have to say. I'm a little bit surprised that the zoning and comprehensive plan has actually has recommendations by the planning commission before we had a chance to have any input. So that's my 2 cents.
Excuse me. Thank you, Dennis.
Hi, I'm Kathy Metcalf. I reside at 331 Sioux Line Road, Hudson. We recently acquired one of the units at 720 First Street as well. I'm going to speak about 2 different things, but I'll keep my comments brief tonight. The first is we chose to buy a unit in downtown Hudson because we've lived here almost 20 years with our 4 children. We've been business owners in the area and have grown to love and admire this area. One thing that personally I chose to do last summer was to join the St. Croix Rowing Club because of my love of the river. I had the great opportunity to launch boats from the beach as well as another landing closer to the railroad tracks throughout the summer. I had the joy of rowing in that area where this development will be and enjoyed seeing this wildlife, the scenery, and enjoying the beautiful waterway we've preserved here in Hudson. When we moved here 20 years ago, we looked at Stillwater and we chose Hudson because of its beauty. I just want to reiterate, this will be a massive structure that boaters on the lake will see. I don't care if there's foliage or no foliage. I can tell you, we'll see it. It's big. It's 40, almost 50 feet tall. It will be viewable and it will detract from the beauty of that beautiful park where I have taken my kids for almost 2 decades to enjoy the wildlife, the beaches, and the walking and biking and running paths that you provide for the city residents. I also want to draw your attention to a letter written by the St. Croix River Association. They're a nonprofit organization. They have over 1,000 members throughout the St. Croix Valley, and they are concerned with protecting the ecological, cultural, and recreational value of the river and the beautiful St. Croix waterway. They wrote an extensive letter. I don't know if that was included in your packet.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just would like to highlight that one of their main points is this is going to come right up to that beach area. This is an area that's enjoyed by school patrons. The children of the area take walks there. People walk along it when they come to the library. I know I walk and use that path when my daughter is dancing at the FIPS. It's going to be a massive structure and it is going to attract the beauty of this town. And the St. Croix River Association seconded that view. They also want to draw attention to the idea that as these older buildings are replaced, or this is an eyesore, this house is an eyesore, our loft looks down on it, it's an eyesore. I think consistency is really important, and keeping the integrity of the beauty of the community is really important. And they express that concern in their letter also. So I would implore you to consider that when you're making future decisions about keeping the integrity and the beauty of this town. Not stopping development, but keeping the integrity of the development. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think now would be a good time to, now that we're referencing some of the letters, just to acknowledge, I want to make sure that everybody is received and read through all of the letters, and I'm going to go through each of them. One from a Charles M. Byrne, who lived, address 720 First Street, 3N, Hudson. Susan Byrne, 320 First Street, 3N, Hudson. Judy Freund, 275 Cove Road, Hudson. Charles Aldine, 720 First Street. Ginger Alden, 720 First Street. Steve Metcalf, 331 Sioux Line Road, 720 First Street, Hudson. Luann Berg, 720 Lofts, Hudson. Joyce Law, don't have an address. The St. Croix River Association Director, Deb Ryan. And then a Lars Glockzine, 115 River Street, Hudson, Wisconsin. Just want to make sure that everybody has those and that they're entered into the record.
Any other comments? Anybody?
I've got one just last comment. So.
We're gonna hold you to that, Andy.
What's that?
We're gonna hold you to that.
Okay. So this was Dennis's home in 2013. And Dennis took this home and now it looks like this. So there was a zone change that took place at that point from residential to B3. B3 doesn't require the same setbacks that Dennis would like this building to have. I also have concerns as we talk about the future that with Dennis's building being a B3, that he has several different options on what he can do with that building. Large assemblies, an approved use, nightclub is approved use, restaurant is approved use. So as we talk about concerns moving into the future on the way that's zoned, I've got the same type of concerns as well. Also, there was a greater than 12% slope here at one point, and though there wasn't a variance on record, I think we can all agree that that was disturbed on his project. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'd like to just comment on that.
Sure. Dennis, come on up, please, to the mic.
Dennis?
That property was one of the houses, the house up above it also was saying zoned light industrial and for years. And the city's comp plan called for B3 to go to the northwest corner of that block. And in 2006, 2005 or 6, we asked the city to rezone it to B3. There were several options, and anyhow, it made some sense. And we were going to do some office, and then condominiums above. And as it turned out, we did live-work condominiums instead, with some additional minor office. But B3 has been was in the comprehensive plan, and we were consistent with that. And the city granted that zoning at the time, back in 2005 or 6.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Mary Byrne, and as you guessed, 720 First Street, big surprise. I also want to comment, I have grave concerns about Dennis's nightclub habits. I'm really worried about the zoning for that area. But that aside, I am here representing my folks who did recently purchase a condo there. And I think it's no doubt in anyone's mind that residential space is needed in this town. And there is a huge market for it. And they can attest personally to the difficulty they had in finding a condo to move into for retirement. And they have many friends who were looking at moving here but couldn't find space. And that said, I think we're all in agreement there that residential space is an excellent idea. It's an excellent investment for historic Hudson, and it's a good step forward. That said, I know we've all seen probably the Wall Street Journal article that was published last year on the retirees that are leaving Minnesota in droves right now because of their tax structure, and how Hudson and Wisconsin in general stands to benefit from that, as do Florida and Texas, consequentially. But as far as the baby boomers reaching retirement age and the Twin Cities being home to more Fortune 500 company headquarters than the next top 3 states combined, we do have a huge opportunity in this city to accommodate that and to grow. As far as the building itself is concerned, when I first saw that picture, I thought immediately that is a beautiful building if it were in Maple Grove or Woodbury. And then I had to chuckle when I heard that they were relocating office space from Woodbury, which I had lived in for many years. I lived in Woodbury for probably close to 6 years. It's a great town, nothing wrong with it. It serves a very different purpose though. So I think I'm also a middle child. I'm an Iraqi Army war veteran multiple times. So I'm a firm believer in compromise. I think there's a good future state path forward here. I don't think either one of us is necessarily looking at that today, but I think we can meet the needs of the community and still accommodate the growth in the residential space for the future of this city. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name is Mike Leverty. I live at 19 Berkmos Park. I also have a commercial building on 2nd Street. So I just want to make a couple comments on behalf of business owners downtown Hudson. Our site downtown just recently went through a redevelopment, so I know how the transition goes from residential to mixed use. We're the site with the new Logos building down there. So I just want to comment, I know we've heard some concerns from those who are right on at the condos right across the street. But I grew up in Hudson, work in Hudson. We were on the trails 3 to 4 times a week. We're in the park consistently. When we first saw the plans, I mean, we're ecstatic. I think it's a fantastic plan. We have no interest in the building other than just being a resident of Hudson and having property downtown. I think the consensus of a lot of people downtown and residents are that they're really excited for the redevelopment. I think we need to continue endorsing and promoting these types of projects. So I just want to comment the buzz I've heard about the project from those who I understand the concerns right across the street, but the other buzz around Hudson is everybody's extremely excited about the redevelopment. And again, we grew up on the river from Hudson, use the parks consistently, and I think it's a fantastic addition to Hudson. So,
Thanks, Mike. Anybody else?
I'm Tom Rose, 800 First Street. I'm actually kitty corner to this project. And when I first saw the plans, I was really surprised. That's right, I was in Rotary with Randy.
Yeah.
Let's see.
When did he send it out, Randy?
Yeah.
It isn't in a yearbook. It's
It's
not.
It's not here.
I don't
It
think
wasn't
I've
in
got
here.
it.
I don't think
I
it's
don't see it. No, it's not here.
Do you have yours, very clear?
I think Emily, I might not have printed it out because I read it through the email.
You have a printed copy, very clear? I didn't bring it with me. All right, well, let me do my best then.
I'll find it too while you're going to.
Oh. All right, do you have the ability to project it on the screen or something like that so everybody can read it without? Not that I make any claims of being a great author, let's not be careful about that, but I don't want to be redundant with you. I do think your process is flawed, honestly, by getting recommendations before you have the public hearing. Two of you are on the council. I know you don't want to make a record that's subject to being overturned in later processes, but I just think that should be looked at.
Buck, I'm used to that.
You're used to being overturned? Yeah. Well, you know, I had the thrill of winning at the United States Supreme Court and then having the law changed. You've got letters and you've heard testimony, and you have all been in the downtown. Some of you have gone to the Thursday night concerts. You know, people park 3 blocks away and they walk to the band show. You've been there for the Minnesota Orchestra night, and you know, the folks are parked way up First Street, and they will be walking by this new building, whatever it is that you decide to approve. And I think those are important viewpoints. The viewpoint looking out of the library building and having a part of the view to the north cut off by this proposed building is not what you want to achieve. I believe it's the letter from the River Association suggests that you think of a rule of thumb that structures along the riverside of First Street should not be taller than whatever they replace. In most cases, that would mean 2 stories, you know, on the riverside of First Street. That means that from the river, people looking at that part of Hudson don't just see the first building, they see the other buildings stepping up the way to First Street and then up to 2nd Street. It's the small town look that we say we value. I urge that on you. Just 2 other points. The fact that the DNR did not comment is strictly neutral. That's neither for nor against. These days, the DNR is not doing a lot of things simply because they don't have the staff to do it. The approval that came from your Board of Adjustment, Peters, earlier in the evening, again, is no vote of confidence for the building, nor is it a criticism of the building as proposed. It's simply an approval of putting something on that footprint, to use the term that your consultant used. Anything, a lemonade stand, would require a variance on a slope and within 40 feet of a bluff. And so as the Board of Adjustment was continually trying to get into questions about the massiveness of this building and the effect on the neighborhood, they kept being turned back, as they should have been, by Mike. Nope, we're only talking about the ability to build anything at all on this. So again, don't be lured off the path to think that that is an approval for this structure. I just urge you, it's 1 story too high and it goes too far south. You have it in your purview when you're granting a conditional use permit to say 1 story shorter, move it 25 feet further north. Come back to us next month with new plans and we'll approve it. I urge you to do that.
Thanks, Buck.
Good evening, Pete Foster, 323 Galahad Road. I am here just to briefly comment on the project, proposed development there with Annie's project. I'm a business owner downtown here. I've got 3 restaurants downtown, all in 3 different commercial buildings. I completely understand where these folks are coming from based on the fact that something is being developed there. Then at this time that obviously they had no knowledge of when they purchased their property. I can sympathize with that because I've got the same situation that is eventually going to happen sooner than later, right to the east of Barker's Bar and Grill. The Gagnon, the Gagnon property will be developed, and my limited view out the back of my restaurant to the west will be gone. However, I believe that that is going to be a much better situation than what we're looking at currently there. I do actually think that Mr. Crone's development will help out the real estate property values downtown. I also want to make sure that everyone does realize that there's lots of restaurants, lots of bars, lots of competition downtown Hudson right now. Being in business here for 24 years, myself, I have seen a dramatic drop-off in my foot traffic and my volume. Certainly not to the point where we're going to need to close the doors, but 50 more employees down the street along with 4 families up top certainly is a benefit selfishly for me, all the other restaurant owners downtown, the retail owners downtown. Based on the other projects that Mr. Crone has done throughout his time here in Hudson, the Monarch building there has been an absolutely excellent improvement to where that's where Dunn Brothers is now. Has been a great improvement to downtown. Obviously, the First Street Station project. You know, I've lived in Hudson since 1977. I do also have 4 daughters and a wife. We love to utilize the parks and the trails down there. I sympathize with the folks that are in that unit across the street, but at the same time, you know, development is moving forward, and for us small business owners that have to make their livelihood downtown Hudson with the strain on the current parking situation, I am welcoming more Monday through Friday daytime people walking around downtown to spend their money at the retail shops or the restaurants. I'm in full support of this project, and I think it's going to be a great addition to Hudson. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Any other comments? Any other comments? Any other comments? Motion?
Move to close.
I second.
Got a motion, a second to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
I'm going to ask Dave, if I may, Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
ask
go ahead.
David to run through the memo he put together on the conditional use permit review.
Yeah, you should have in your packets a memo from me dated February 19th. There's 2 types of items that need to be covered under the conditional use permit for this project to be approved. The first is the actual use of the building. As it's been proposed, the first floor is office, second floor is office, and the third floor is multi-family residential. Consistent with the B4 zoning, those uses have to be clearly stated. If the uses were to change, they would have to come back in and amend their conditional use permit. So if they wanted to put, let's say, convert second floor from office to residential, they would have to come back before this body or before the city council and change that conditional use permit. So that's the first, is the actual use. The second is, and the reason why I was involved in the project is to review the development with respect to your Riverway Code. Your Riverway Code references NR 115, NR 116, and NR 118. The development is in compliance with the requirements of those codes, but for the provisions that are covered under the conditional use permit and the conditions that the Board of Zoning Appeals reviewed earlier this evening. So number 2, they are requesting to construct the structure within the slope preservation zone and its buffer. That would include filling and grading. I should remove vegetation removal because it's grassed now. Filling and grading of the land, and then structural erosion control measures to reestablish the site. And within the slope preservation zone and its buffer. I'm making a recommendation to approve the conditional use permit for the Riverway items with the following conditions. The first is that the property owner must obtain the final development plan approval, including but not limited to stormwater management and architectural design review from the Plan Commission and City Council. A property owner must obtain building permit and state plan approvals, including but not limited to Chapter 30 permit and notice of intent permit, as needed prior to construction activities. Any change in use, as I mentioned before, if you were to expand the multifamily residential, would require a new conditional use permit or amended conditional use permit. And then any omissions or conditions not covered under this, they still have to comply with city ordinances. And then the conditions, this conditional use permit would run with the land, not with Mr. Cohen. So if the property was sold, the conditional use permit would stay valid.
Okay. Public hearing on an application for a conditional use permit submitted by Monarch Venture LLC to permit development adjacent to the St. Croix National Scenic Riverway and to permit construction within the slope preservation zone, 721 First Street. Any comment? Any comment? Any comment?
Same as above?
Same as above. Got it. Thanks, Buck.
Move to close.
Got a motion to close. Is there a second? Second. Motion a second to close. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. The public hearing is closed. Discussion of possible action on an application for a conditional use permit for a mixed-use building submitted by Monarch Ventures LLC, 721 First Street.
Just ran through
Yeah.
Steve's, I mean, that was the narrative.
I'll move we approve the Monarch mixed-use building submitted for 721 First Street and the conditions stated by consultant.
Okay. Got a motion?
I will second.
Okay, got a motion, a second. Discussion.
I think the First Street Station, what was done there is phenomenal, and definitely a huge welcome to that area. I think,
Sorry.
I think the removal of that house is a great idea. I don't think it's adding to the neighborhood. I have concerns that, we've heard several public concerns too. I mean, so all of that being said, you know, does the current plan really fit within the context of what that neighborhood is? I mean, this is a big building. It is long and it is tall. And there isn't, because of the B4, they don't have to necessarily have much of a buffer. So, I mean, we're going from a beautiful park green space to a huge building. Appreciating everyone's comments, I think, is there an opportunity to scale back, to look at it differently? I just think it is a very large, I mean, the current one, which looks phenomenal, you know, that's, you know, almost 6,000 square feet. This one is going to be over 7,000 square feet, almost, you know, taller than those, or as tall as those condos, understanding that you don't always know what's going to be built around you when you have those empty spaces. I just think that's a huge concern to me. I don't think, I mean, the building just feels massive to me in that neighborhood. And I'd like to see more green space, especially as you make the transition from the park to the B4 area. I think you can do more than what is just generally required for that area. We could do more.
With those comments made, are you suggesting that the zoning be changed?
I'm saying, you know, I think.
Because, you know, under the B4, you know, they're fulfilling those requirements.
Right, but they could.
I know, but I mean, it's kind of definitions here,
Yeah.
so I'm just
I'm
trying
not,
to
no, I'm
figure
just.
that out too.
Right, I mean, and I know a lot of time and money and energy has gone into these plans for a long time. And I perhaps missed the last meeting, but I just, it feels, I mean, if we really listen to the comments that we heard tonight too, there's definitely support for, changing this area and improving it, and I think it's great if we can create more jobs downtown that are gonna utilize the restaurants and the retail. I think it creates more parking for some of those times when, in the evenings and the weekends, when we don't have enough already. So it sounds like that they can meet the parking requirements during the day. I'm just wondering, do we want to have some conversation about scaling it back a little bit?
Any other comments?
It is a big building. It is forever gonna change the way that that looks down there. You're absolutely right about that. There's gonna be no getting around it. It's bigger than the warehouse building that's down there now.
And I think it becomes kind of abrupt, where you go across from the public use area to that building. And that's a pretty abrupt change, but.
I mean, it'd be great to see something that matches First Street Station a little bit closer in scale. Because looks phenomenal, I think, and a great use of that space that all of us thought needed great improvement, and taking the house down, I think, is great. So, but I mean, is there an opportunity just to, again, if you have a tenant that is already planning and needs a certain amount of space, that then maybe you don't do the top residential, or that becomes office too, I don't know. But that is just, based on the comments that we heard tonight, I support redevelopment, I support doing something with that space. My only concern is, how does it fit within the rest of the context of the neighborhood? Is there something that we can do so it's not such a big change from parkland to immediate this huge structure?
Any other comments?
I think you're asking the wrong person. You'd have to ask them. Or are you trying to dictate what you want built on there?
We don't dictate, what
Well,
is built.
you're suggesting to change the project for them?
I'm suggesting, is there an opportunity to, if, maybe others don't feel the same way, and everyone thinks the proposed plan is the way to go.
You want us to change their plan?
No, we don't have the
We should
authority
ask
to
them
change it.
if they're willing to.
Is there some wiggle room for a little bit more green space? Is there a room to maybe not have the building as big as it is? Is it maybe an opportunity not to have a two-story building that we had originally talked about in that space?
So again, are you gonna ask them? Are they you guys wanna answer that, or feel you can't answer that today? Why can't you?
So if I hear you correctly, Mary Claire, you're saying you can't support it with a yes vote because of that criteria. Whereas if it was presented back to you as a smaller building, two-story rather than three-story, something like that, you could approve it.
But I mean, this
Did I
is,
paraphrase you correctly? I don't mean to put,
but I mean, this is our conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm the only one that feels that way. But I mean, based on the comments that we've heard tonight, based on the comments that we heard at the Board of Appeals, which we only dealt with the variance, which we approved just the variance. Because it is unbuildable if they don't have a variance. I mean, no one could build on that land if a variance wasn't granted. So.
My comments, I share some of your personal feelings. I guess what I am driven by and dictated here, though, is they're conforming to the land use or the zoning. They're conforming to the city code of what you can put in there. They're conforming to the heights, the setbacks, everything that everybody has to meet this criteria to build in this place, and they're agreeing to do that with no variances. Usually we have variances and other things, so I guess the way I view it, even though I understand and share some of your thinking, they're doing everything we've asked. Do we change the code? Do we do other things? I mean, that raises all kinds of questions. Ask them to change their plan. I know where you're coming from, but they're meeting our criteria.
Right, but we did grant the variance already, so that was a variance that was needed that we did grant. But, in other projects, we have had conversation about scale of a building, how does it fit? So, I mean, that's why I only raised my questions, because we've had to have those conversations on previous projects.
Well, they've been very good at giving back with this project as far as the 7 extra parking stalls and then the much-needed improvement on the end of Orange Street for the rowers and the kayakers. To a point that was made earlier about the River City development, that was not ever denied. It was they pulled out of that development because of the crash of 2008. No one denied that height scale for that building at that time. And if you look at Mr. Kroll's building across the street, it was never intended to look like that and as high as that is. So I guess I challenge the thought of this being out of place down there.
Okay. I think I didn't say out of place. I think I said more, does it fit within the context of the neighborhood?
At the same time, going back to some other history, the former other Erickson building, the lumberyard, was an eyesore at the same time. No one, no one knew what that was going to look like either, and we went on good faith. That building's a gem, so much that the city bought it. That didn't obstruct anybody's view. That didn't disappoint anybody. I remember sitting here and no one came to object to that. You know, this is a good thing for the downtown Hudson. And I know you know that.
Yeah, that's what I said.
I know you know
I
that.
started out with that.
And I think these folks have done their due diligence in trying to present a plan that works within our parameters. And I think if we have an it's a tough job. Yeah, of course, we got feelings. They bought property right across the street. All of a sudden, another building's going up. Well, it's competition.
Yep.
So I think it's a good project. I was born and raised down there, 2 blocks from there. You think I'd be the first one to object to it, but no. Clean it up, make it look nice, and let's move forward.
Anybody else? Anybody? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved, pardon me?
Nothing.
Motion's approved.
Mary, did you?
I didn't vote.
Discussion and possible action on an application for a conditional use permit submitted by Monarch Ventures LLC to permit development adjacent to the St. Croix National Scenic Riverway and to permit construction within the slope preservation zone, 721 First Street.
Is that what they bid on earlier, the slope preservation?
Yeah, David.
Yeah, if I can jump in here. So technically, the conditional use permit, there's the use, that is the zoning issue. There's the Riverway items, and so we included them as separate agenda items just to clarify that they were acted upon. They were both acted upon, but I guess it doesn't hurt to do the same motion again.
Yeah, I think it.
We still need a motion.
Okay, yep.
You need a motion, did you say?
Yeah.
Yes.
Same thing.
They already met on it.
I believe it's already been covered, but just to be safe.
I will make the motion necessary, whatever wording needs to be used to proceed on this issue. I don't know how else to say it.
Okay, motion second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion possible action on final development plans for FLAS LLC, 721 First Street, Monarch Ventures LLC.
Sorry, who seconded that?
Frank.
Sorry. Just missed it. Thank you.
Anybody?
We've been talking about the project the whole time. You know,
Item I.
I move we approve final development plans for FLAS LLC, 721 Monarch Ventures,
I did have conditions attached to that.
which will include it in motion.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Second. Motion second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion possible action on final development plans for new office building, 76 Cooley Road, Elliott Architects.
The applicant's here to present the final development plans for that project too, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind stretching his legs, so.
Well, he gets to stretch his legs.
Yeah, we can stand up too if we want.
Nobody else has a comment except
Yeah.
me.
Man, man. Here's what
It's a big-ass building. It's a big-ass building.
Yeah.
Okay. Gonna start us out, Mike?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I mean, they've seen the concept plans.
Okay, we saw the concept plans. Nothing's really changed since we submitted those. We have a few additional comments from the city staff, which we're happy to address as part of the condition of the approval. The building, for those that maybe weren't here last time, it's about a 2,000 square foot footprint office building. 2 stories, or maybe a story and a half. The lower story is banked into the hillside a little bit. So we have none of the height issues of the previous project. Really the challenge on this particular site is, as it pertains to development, is the slope, and we're utilizing really the only developable part of it for our building placement. And we've got one access point to our parking, and about 4,000 square feet total approximately, and it'll be all for Elliott Architects, as we're out of space in our current building. So.
Brian, where's the nightclub going down there?
Well, Randy, we have had a disco ball in our office, but I don't dance, as you well know, so there will be no nightclub.
So it's single tenant, just you?
Yeah.
Single tenant, just Elliott Architects, correct.
Zoned office. It's a tight site, squeezed every last little inch out of that thing that we could with the grades the way they are.
Move to
I
approve.
mean, the biggest challenge is certainly the sewer line, and we'll have to do some easements. for
We
that.
have to do some easement amendments. We worked through that with Kip and the utility director, so, we're comfortable with it.
Okay, we got a motion. Second. Motion second.
Excuse me, does the motion include the staff recommendations?
Yes.
We need
Yes,
to say that, I guess.
Yes, it does include the staff recommendations.
All right, so we have motion second to approve. Any discussion? It really pays to be at the end of the agenda, doesn't it?
I thought so.
All right. No discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on amendment to Municipal Code, Chapter 255, zoning, Section 255-85, and Section 255-89 to remove security deposit language. Mike?
Simple, continuing to work on those, code adjustments for our fees and getting away from the deposit language. We had I presented that, study that we had, SEH put together for us on our fees and do some comparisons. This again is just the next step in getting away from the deposit language and removing that.
I want to be clear that the form that was on top of your packet, that one is the revised version that had Kathy's.
Yeah, after Kathy went through it.
Some additional changes, so the one that is not attached to the issue sheet is the most updated.
One dated 2/20/18, right?
Yes.
I'll move we approve.
Got a motion?
Second.
Motion second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion's approved. Unfinished business, discussion of possible action on amendment to municipal code chapter 202 signs, section 202-7 for the purpose of garage, yard sale signage and other temporary signage.
I haven't gotten to it.
Good.
In all honesty.
Good.
I'm working on it. We will get there.
Second.
Okay, moving second to postpone. Any discussion?
I move to adjourn.
And all those voting on postponement, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion's approved, it's postponed.
Second.
Well, I think it's communications and items for future agendas.
We're fine.
So do you have upcoming meeting dates, Mike? Let's see on that.
Yeah, that's a good thing. I think we should talk about that right now. I don't think it makes sense to have a meeting March 6th. What about the 13th and the 27th?
13th, I'm gone.
I'm gone the 27th.
Okay.
Ooh. There's a big debate on the 13th.
6 and 20.
Okay.
What are you saying?
If we need the 6th, we can do the 6th.
I'll be gone the 6th regardless,
Okay.
but I'm.
And then the 20th.
I'm sorry, I'm confused.
library that day.
Those are possible dates?
Those would be
Yes.
possible dates. I'm floating
6th and the
those.
20th?
We
Yep.
can't do the 20th.
I'm sorry, so 6, 13, and 20?
22nd?
Bingo.
Yes. I'm,
6, 13, and 20.
no, not 13. I'm talking
13 is out.
6. Let's just settle on the 6th for right now. The 20th is not working.
I'm gone that whole week.
Okay, so we're really at the 6th. Everything else has pretty much got to wait unless something really pressing comes up. that I
Are we not thinking about Thursdays for right now? Seeing as how these Tuesdays are kind of jammed up.
I'm okay with moving it. I'm okay with moving it back to Thursdays. I understand that that's what it was.
I like it on Thursday, to be
Or-
honest with you.
I'm talking about temporarily.
Oh.
Well, I don't want to.
Well, I'm just saying, for March right now, Tuesdays seem to be a real difficulty, and
Okay.
maybe we ought to be looking at Thursdays for March.
Whatever works, I mean.
Shoot us an email. Can't decide tonight.
I'm okay with everything except that week of the 13th.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I know that we need to get schedules set for everybody, and I liked how it worked last time where we did the 2 months out. I want to arrive at that same conclusion this time, because, you know, everybody's busy and we have obligations. So I'll send something out tomorrow, or Emily can, and we'll get it all figured out and get them on the calendar. But I'd like to, you know, if we're gonna have, generally, these meetings are the first and third Tuesdays of every month, we should probably try and adhere to that if possible, because once we start deviating from that just because it works for everybody, then, you know, the general public doesn't have.
Got it.
So
Okay.
we'll send some dates out.
Be that way.
I move to adjourn.
Now?
Got a motion second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.